Hi there, everyone, and welcome to the Daily Gardener, and thank you so much for listening. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling, and it is March 10th, and there are just 10 days left until the first day of spring. So we've got that marvelous kismet going on there. March 10th, 10 days to go. Today we celebrate an English poet whose words were sometimes inspired by gardens and now often mark memorials in gardens around the world. We'll also learn about a man remembered for his calendarian. It was kind of like a baby book for his plants. We'll hear an excerpt from a memoir about growing up as the daughter of a florist. And we grow that garden library today with a book about decorating your home with botanicals. And then we'll wrap things up with a story about something new for the garden, blue potatoes. I kid you not. Now, before I get into today's episode, I just want to take a second and acknowledge two reviews that were recently left for the show over at Podchaser. The first one is from Marcy Douglas. Marcy wrote, "The amount of information in this podcast is amazing. Jennifer's voice is so soothing." And I always chuckle when I read that because my kids, of course, would disagree, but then they're probably hearing mom voice and you're hearing podcaster voice. So that's probably the difference. In any case, Marcy continues. She writes, "And the newsletter is so full of everything. A gardener's delight and a must-have if you love nature, gardening, and reading. My favorite." Well, Marcy, I really appreciate that because, of course, I work very hard on the newsletter. As you can probably tell, I try to make it like I'm writing a little note to a garden friend, and you are all my garden friends. So thank you for writing that review, Marcy. And then Sharon Torwalp also wrote a review for the show. So thank you, Sharon. And Sharon wrote, "The Daily Gardener is a wonderful piece of my day. It's entertaining, educational, uplifting, and fun. I look forward to Jennifer's pleasant voice each morning." Thank you. Well, thank you, Sharon. Thank you so much, you guys, Sharon and Marcy, for leaving a review for the show on Podchaser. As you know, if you're a regular listener to the show, I have a goal of getting 50 reviews for the show over on Podchaser. So if you would like to help me out, I would be happy to give you a shout out on the show. It's the least I can do. And what you need to do if you want to help me out is just head on over to podchaser, all one word, .com. And then once you're there, look for the Daily Gardener, click on reviews, and leave a review for the show. It's just that simple. All right, enough of that. Let's start talking a little bit about seed starting because you can start your seeds in flats, if that's a strategy that you want to try. And you know, it's so wonderful to use something and then find a new way to repurpose it. And if you have a garden center nearby or even a big box store, they will give you flats. They will just give you flats to use. It is just the way to go. And you know, if you have any uncertainty around using flats, there are all kinds of wonderful YouTube videos and blog posts on that. So all you need to do is Google that. There'll be a ton of things that come up. If you've tried it before, you're probably still using that method. And if you've never tried it before, you really should give it a try this year. So there you go. Enough said on this topic. It's time for curated news. Today's curated news is very timely. It's a post that was shared over in Dave's Garden last week. And it caught my attention because the title is Sowing Your Own Pansies and Violets. And I was just speaking with a listener about this last week. This listener was used to growing 500 impatiens in flats. And then this year she was planning to transition to pansies. And so when I saw this post, I wanted to share it with you. And also, hats off to Audrey Stallsmith for her very clever writing in this post. She starts it out this way. Do you want more pansies for less pesos? Try sowing them yourself. Anyway, she has a lot of cute little witty things in her writing from time to time, and I appreciate that. Now, there are a couple of things that Audrey points out that I think are worth sharing. One is that if you've ever tried to grow pansies and you haven't had success, it could have been the seed you were using. In fact, Audrey says your pansy seeds should not be more than a year old, so make sure you're using a current pack of seeds. Now, that said, violets are an entirely different animal. And as Audrey points out, they're much more difficult to germinate. She shares some tips on that in her post. And as for myself, I'll be buying my pansy bowls from the garden center as per usual. And when it comes to violets, I'm swimming in violets up here at the cabin. They're in the front yard. They're in the backyard. I have white. I have purple. They're absolutely gorgeous. My biggest challenge will be going out and picking them, especially the beautiful, almost periwinkle color ones that are on the edge of my property, because my neighbor comes by and kills them because he doesn't like how they spread. And so last year I learned that if I want them, I need to go out and pick them quickly so that I can enjoy them in a vase in the house. And that's my plan this spring. I'm keeping my eye on the border of my property. So there you go. Now, if you would like to check out this post from Dave's Garden on sowing pansies and violets, and you're a member of the Facebook group, you will be able to check this out very easily just by using the little search feature on the page in the community. And you can just search for the word pansy or violet, and this post will pop up, and then you can read all about it. And if you're not in the Facebook group for the show, you are certainly welcome to join at any time. It's 100% free, and it's very easy to join. All you need to do is search for the words Daily Gardener Community, where you'd search for a friend, and then request to join. I'd love to meet you in the group. It's time for today's botanical history. All right, here's today's botanical history for March 10th. Today is the birthday of the American botanist John Torrey, who was born on this day, March 10th, in 1796. John was the first American botanist to study the flora of New York State. And the area that John botanized included what is now Greenwich Village, the area of the Elgin Botanic Garden, which is now Rockefeller Center, and Bloomingdale, which is now the Upper West Side of Manhattan, as well as Hoboken, New Jersey. One of the things that we remember most about John is his calendarion, which was a phenological record where he documented his plants. He recorded the species, location, and date of first bloom. It was kind of like a baby book for his plants. Historically speaking, farmers often kept similar records to track planting seasons and growing cycles. And Thomas Jefferson did the same thing as John in a book he called The Calendar. But with regard to John's calendar, the calendarion, you're in luck because it's been digitized by the New York Botanic Garden, so you can check it out when you get a chance. And if you're especially serious about checking it out, I put a link to it in today's show notes, and you can find those over on the website at thedailygardener.org. Now, as for today's gardeners, most of us are paying extra attention to temperatures. Do you have any idea what your soil temperature is right now? Well, here's a little secret that many experienced gardeners know. In spring, soil temperature is much more important than air temperature. So as these first nice days roll in, it's vital to remember that these first tastes of spring belie what is going on in our soil. It takes many warm days to warm up the soil. And my general rule of thumb for cool weather crops is that I wait until the nighttime temperatures are reliably above 45 degrees, because that means the soil temperature is high enough to support cool season crops like lettuce and kale. And then for the warmer crops, I wait until the nighttime temperatures are reliably above 50. For cold climates and growing zones, like the one I'm living in here in Minnesota, that doesn't generally happen until the end of May. So there's no rushing this unless you're going to do something like use row cover. But even then, you have to be careful. So this is where phenological records, like the ones John Tory kept over 200 years ago, are worth keeping. And it's another reason why gardeners love the 5-year calendars, so they can keep track of these milestone events and then compare them year over year. And now, circling back to John Tory, here's some fun John Tory trivia. As you might have suspected, the mountain known as Torrey's Peak in Colorado is named for John Tory. And today is the anniversary of the death of the English poet, dramatist, and art scholar Laurence Binyon, who died on this day, March 10th, in 1943. During Laurence's time at Trinity College in Oxford, he won the Newdigate Poetry Prize. Laurence was a tremendous poet, and some of his work referenced the garden, as in this beautiful verse about spring. Laurence wrote, "They will come again, the leaf and the flower, to arise from squalor of rottenness into the old splendor." Today, Laurence is best remembered for his World War I poem, For the Fallen, which captured the hearts and the grief of the British public during the darkest days of the war. The fourth quatrain of For the Fallen became a popular inscription on tombstones and on memorials in gardens. It goes like this: "They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years contemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them." In Sheffield, England, Laurence's For the Fallen is on a marker at the Sheffield Peace Garden. The garden was redesigned for the millennium and includes new garden spaces and more seating. But the garden is most beloved for its fantastic fountains and water features. The cascades around the perimeter were designed to represent flowing molten steel, a nod to the city's history as a center for steel production. The long troughs or channels honor the 5 rivers that powered Sheffield's mills. And then the glorious walk-in center fountain is perfectly centered in front of Sheffield's magnificent Gothic town hall. The garden is surrounded with gorgeous old buildings and shops, and it serves as a green space in the city center. And before COVID, it was the perfect spot to have a picnic, read a book, or people watch. And every spring, tulip beds beckon visitors back to the park. It's time for Unearthed Words. Today's Unearthed Words come from Patricia Hampel from one of my favorite memoirs. It's called The Florist's Daughter. Here's an excerpt. The work was hard, I suppose, on our feet all day, running around, lifting heavy plants, contending with the prima donna tendencies of the customers. But the place had such drama during the holiday rush when I worked there that the sheer pace of the day, filled with the customers demanding subplots, made me happy, more than happy. I felt important, or I felt I was doing something important, which came to the same thing. A demand for violets might come in. Violets? Is that woman nuts? Mrs. Butler would say. Ollie and Mrs. Butler, elderly but slim and elegant, worked with the self-possession of head nurses in a triage unit. At the end of the day, Ollie took the sheaf of telegraph delivery orders and made her calls, speaking low into the receiver of the telephone by her order desk. Los Angeles? This is an FTD order from St. Paul. The great world was so far away, but Ollie spoke nonchalantly every afternoon to the coasts. Let me spell that for you. And would you kindly repeat for verification? Yes, that's love, Love, comma Bobby, Bobby. Yes, Y, as in yardstick. No, he doesn't spell it that way. Just the Y. It's time to grow that garden library with today's book, Flower Market by Michelle Mason. This book came out in 2019, and the subtitle is Botanical Style at Home, one of my favorite topics. Well, I love decorating my home with botanicals, and I remember when Michelle's book came out, I was so excited for it because back in 2013, Michelle co-founded Mason and Painter. It's a vintage emporium in East London. Now, what I love about Michelle's book, aside from the jaw-droppingly beautiful photographs and inspiration, are her fantastic tips on styling your home and then capitalizing on seasonal plants and flowers. Her rooms are so inspiring and unique, and the whole effect is very fresh and welcoming. This book is 176 pages of gorgeous photographs of botanical styling, ideas on how to put together different reclaimed pieces and vintage pieces, and marvelous tips and tricks for how to incorporate more plants and flowers into your home decor. You can get a copy of Flower Market by Michelle Mason and support the show using the Amazon link in today's show notes for around $20. Finally, here's something sweet to revive the little botanic spark in your heart. They say variety is the spice of life. Well, for gardeners, varieties are the key to having the garden of your dreams. Back in 2019, in the Old Farmer's Almanac, one gardener wrote about passion for growing blue potatoes, an easy-to-grow heirloom in the spring. Here's what she wrote. I planted my first all-blue potato back in 1990, and I've been hooked ever since. Who doesn't love to mash blue potatoes? As a kid, I hated potatoes. My mom cooked mashed potatoes with the consistency of wallpaper paste. Adulthood wasn't much better. I even avoided French fries. Children changed the equation. I needed to set a positive example. And a seed catalog arrived one spring with photos of vivid blue-skinned potatoes. The flesh was blue, too. I thought my son would eat them out of curiosity, but I was really just projecting my own potato problems because he already was a French fry and baked potato fan. Now, blue and purple pigments developed as a mechanism to shield tubers from excessive levels of ultraviolet light found at high altitudes. Any potato is easy to grow, and all blues are even easier, as they seem to resist fungal diseases. I place tubers on top of a garden bed that has been enriched with compost and a bit of soil sulfur. Potatoes develop in alkaline soils, and my ground is 7.2 pH, so I add sulfur to acidify the soil. I use whole tubers instead of cutting them down into chunks, as many gardeners do. I feel I'm avoiding a rot problem, as early spring in my area is cold and wet. After spacing the potatoes about 12 inches apart in every direction, I cover the bed with about a foot of straw. That's all I do. Other easy techniques are to grow potatoes in a wire cage above the ground or in grow bags. You can start harvesting baby or new potatoes when the plants flower. And yes, the flowers are blue too. Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener. And remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day. Hey, thanks for spending part of your day with The Daily Gardener. If you want to read even more botanical brevities, just head on over to thedailygardener.org. That's where you can find all the stories, biographies, and books that I share on the show. And while you're there, be sure to sign up for my free Friday newsletter. It has lots of goodies in it, and I try to make the newsletter like you're getting a marvelous letter from a garden friend. You can always find The Daily Gardener on all your favorite social media. You can follow the show on Twitter, and you have a standing invitation to join the free Facebook group for listeners of the show. Just search for Daily Gardener Community the next time you're on Facebook and request to join. Last but not least, you can easily share your gardener greetings or book submissions by emailing me at jennifer@thedailygardener.org. The Daily Gardener is produced in lovely Maple Grove in Wyoming, Minnesota, with the help of Paige Mance, Brooke Bierbaum, and Eric Begay. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling, and as always, have a great day in the garden, and we'll see you tomorrow.